The Zephyrian survey ship Celestial Dawn drifted through the outer rim of what their star charts marked as Sector 7749 Omega, a forgotten corner of space that hadn't been visited in over 3,000 standard cycles. Captain Vexhai adjusted his secondary optical array, focusing on the peculiar readings emanating from the third planet of an unremarkable yellow star. "Commander," his sensor officer, Kriltha, called out with barely contained excitement. "These readings are impossible. The planet shows clear signs of technological civilization, but according to our records, this system was surveyed millennia ago and marked as primitive." Vexhai's mandibles clicked in thought. The Galactic Council maintained meticulous records of every inhabited world. Species were cataloged from the moment they achieved fire, monitored through their development, and contacted only when they reached faster-than-light capability. It was the fundamental law that had governed galactic civilization for over 50,000 years. "Perhaps the sensors are malfunctioning," Vexhai suggested, though he knew Kriltha was too competent for such errors. "Run a full diagnostic." The diagnostic came back clean. The readings persisted. Energy signatures consistent with advanced technology dotted the planet's surface. Radio transmissions filled the electromagnetic spectrum. Most puzzling of all, the atmosphere showed signs of massive industrial activity that should have been detected centuries ago. Kriltha's tentacles writhed with nervous energy as she pulled up the historical records. "Sir, the last survey was conducted 4,847 standard cycles ago by the exploration vessel Wisdom's Edge Asterisk. They reported a planet populated by primitive bipedal mammals who had barely discovered agriculture. The species was classified as pre-technological and given a development watch status of Category 7, not to be contacted for at least 10,000 cycles." "Show me the current scans," Vexhai ordered. The holographic display materialized in the ship's center, showing a blue-green world wrapped in swirling white clouds. But what made Vexhai's breathing apparatus stutter were the lights. Thousands upon thousands of artificial lights dotted the night side of the planet, forming intricate patterns that could only indicate vast cities. Orbital analysis revealed structures that defied easy categorization, massive geometric shapes that seemed to serve both artistic and functional purposes. "Commander, I'm detecting over 7 billion individual life signs," Kriltha reported, her voice barely above a whisper. "The population has increased by a factor of 1,000 since the last survey, and sir, I'm reading energy signatures that suggest they've achieved fusion power, quantum computing, and this can't be right." "What is it?" Vexhai leaned forward, his exoskeleton scraping against his command chair. "I'm detecting what appears to be faster-than-light communication arrays. Multiple installations across the planet's surface, and 3 orbital stations that weren't there in our approach scans an hour ago." Vexhai felt his circulatory fluid run cold. A species couldn't advance from primitive agriculture to faster-than-light technology in less than 5,000 cycles. The fastest recorded advancement in galactic history was the Etherian Empire, and they had taken 12,000 cycles to progress from their first metal tools to achieving interstellar flight. "Are you certain these are indigenous developments?" he asked, hopping against hope that this was some elaborate mistake. Kriltha's sensor readings painted an even more disturbing picture. "Sir, the technological signatures are unlike anything in our databases. The fusion reactors operate on principles that our best scientists theorize about but have never successfully implemented. Their computing systems seem to use quantum entanglement in ways that violate several fundamental laws of physics as we understand them." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's life support systems. Vexhai realized they were witnessing something that challenged the very foundations of galactic civilization. The careful order maintained by the Council, the structured progression of species from primitive to advanced, the predictable timeline of development, all of it was crumbling before his eyes. "Run a deep scan of the outer system," he ordered. "Look for any signs of external intervention. Another species might have contacted them secretly." The deep scan revealed something even more unsettling. The system's asteroid belt showed signs of massive mining operations, but not from any known galactic technology. Entire asteroids had been hollowed out and converted into what appeared to be manufacturing facilities. The precision of the engineering suggested a level of spatial manipulation that even the most advanced council species had yet to achieve. More disturbing still were the defensive installations. Hidden among the asteroid facilities were what could only be described as weapons platforms. The energy signatures suggested destructive capabilities that rivaled the Council's most advanced military vessels. "Commander," Kriltha's voice trembled with a mixture of awe and fear. "I'm detecting multiple ships approaching our position. They're moving at sublight speeds, but their acceleration curves are impossible. They're pulling gravitational forces that should crush any known organic life form." 3 sleek vessels appeared on their sensors, approaching from different vectors with a coordination that spoke of advanced tactical planning. Each ship was roughly the size of the Celestial Dawn asterisk, but their hull configurations were unlike anything in the galactic databases. "They're hailing us," the communications officer announced. "The signal is coming through on frequencies we use for emergency council communications, but the encryption is completely foreign." Vexai straightened in his command chair. First contact protocols demanded that he record everything and immediately alert the council, but something told him this situation was far beyond standard procedures. "Put them through," he decided. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a creature that made Vexai's optical organs dilate in shock. The being appeared to be one of the primitive bipedal mammals from the original survey, but there was nothing primitive about its bearing or surroundings. It stood in what was clearly an advanced command center, its small, dark eyes focused with an intelligence that seemed to pierce through the screen. "Greetings," the creature said in perfect galactic standard, its voice carrying an undertone that Vexai couldn't quite identify. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Network. You are Captain Vexai of the Zephyrian Exploration Corps aboard the vessel Celestial Dawn Asterisk. We need to talk." The casual use of his name and ship designation sent chills through Vexai's exoskeleton. Not only had these beings achieved impossible technological advancement, but they had somehow identified his vessel and crew without any apparent scanning. "How do you know?" he began. "How we know is part of what we need to discuss," Admiral Chen interrupted. "Captain, your arrival here has triggered certain protocols that have been in place for a very long time. Protocols that were established for the protection of not just humanity, but the entire galactic community." Vexai noticed that the human's expression carried a weight that spoke of terrible knowledge. "I don't understand. According to our records, your species has barely achieved space flight." A smile played at the corners of the human's mouth, but it wasn't an expression of joy. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret that others weren't ready to hear. "Captain Vexai," Admiral Chen said slowly, "what you're about to learn will change everything you thought you knew about the galaxy, about evolution, about the nature of intelligence itself. Your species, along with every other member of the Galactic Council, exists because we have been very, very careful to remain hidden." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge of the Celestial Dawn in stunned silence. Vexai stared at the empty screen, his mind racing with implications that seemed to grow more terrifying with each passing moment. Outside the ship's viewports, the 3 human vessels maintained their positions, their presence a silent testament to the fact that everything the galaxy thought it knew was about to change forever. Admiral Chen materialized aboard the Celestial Dawn without any visible transportation device, simply appearing in the ship's conference room in a shimmer of displaced light that violated every known law of physics. Captain Vexai and his senior officers stood frozen, their various biological functions stuttering at the casual display of technology that shouldn't exist. "Please sit," Chen said, gesturing to the chairs around the conference table. Her uniform bore markings that seemed familiar yet completely alien, symbols that resembled ancient galactic scripts but predated any known civilization. "What I'm about to tell you will be difficult to accept, but it's time the galaxy knew the truth." Vexai's mandibles clicked nervously as he settled into his chair. "Admiral, with respect, your species was classified as pre-technological less than 5,000 cycles ago. Even the most accelerated development curves don't account for what we've observed." Chen's expression grew somber. "That classification was accurate, Captain. 5,000 cycles ago, humans had indeed just discovered agriculture, but that's because we wanted it to appear that way." The Zephyrian sensor officer, Kriltha, leaned forward, her tentacles writhing with confusion. "That's impossible. Our evolutionary biologists have studied thousands of species. Technological development follows predictable patterns. No species can simply skip evolutionary stages. You're correct, Chen agreed. No species can skip those stages, but what if a species had already completed them long before your first survey? She touched a device at her wrist, and the conference room's walls transformed into a three-dimensional display showing the galaxy as it appeared today. Countless star systems pulsed with the soft glow that indicated Council-affiliated civilizations. The Galactic Council believes that civilization began with the Etherians 50,000 cycles ago, Chen continued. The historical record shows a steady progression. The Etherians achieved interstellar flight, discovered other worlds, made contact with primitive species, guided their development, and gradually built the cooperative galactic community that exists today. The display shifted, showing the well-known timeline of galactic development. Each species appeared in chronological order, their advancement carefully tracked and guided by their predecessors. But what if I told you, Chen said quietly, that humans achieved interstellar flight over 200,000 cycles ago? The silence in the conference room was absolute. Vexhai felt his breathing apparatus struggle to process the implications. 200,000 cycles. That would mean humans achieved space flight before any known civilization. Not just space flight, Chen corrected. Full galactic exploration, advanced physics manipulation, consciousness transfer technology, and something your species hasn't even theorized yet, temporal observation capabilities. Kriltha's optical organs dilated to their maximum extent. You're claiming to have time travel technology. Not travel, Chen clarified. Observation. We learned very early in our development that altering the past creates paradoxes that can unravel reality itself. But observing the past, seeing the flow of causality without interfering, that became possible once we understood the quantum nature of consciousness. The display around them shifted again, this time showing Earth as it had appeared 200,000 cycles ago. Advanced cities covered the surface, space elevators reached into orbit, and massive ships moved between the stars. But then the image changed dramatically. The cities vanished, the space elevators crumbled, and the planet appeared primitive and untouched. What happened? Vexhai whispered. Chen's expression grew heavy with the weight of ancient tragedy. We encountered something that made us realize we were not ready for the responsibility of galactic civilization. During our early explorations, we discovered a dead galaxy, completely empty of life. Every star, every planet, nothing but cold rock and dying suns. She paused, letting the implications sink in before continuing. Our archaeological teams found evidence of what had happened. A single species had achieved technological supremacy over their galaxy. They had guided, controlled, and ultimately absorbed every other intelligent life form they encountered. In their quest for perfection and order, they had eliminated diversity, creativity, and ultimately, the very spark that makes life worth living. The display showed images of vast, empty cities on dead worlds, perfect in their construction but utterly lifeless. We realized, Chen continued, that becoming the dominant galactic power would lead us down the same path. Humans have certain traits that make us exceptionally effective at conquest and control. Our adaptability, our persistence, our ability to learn and integrate the knowledge of other species, these qualities that might seem beneficial are actually incredibly dangerous when applied on a galactic scale. Vexhai's mind reeled with the implications. So you simply disappeared. We made the most difficult decision in human history, Chen said. We dismantled our galactic civilization and returned to Earth. Every human colony was abandoned or carefully hidden. Every trace of our advanced technology was removed or buried. We made ourselves invisible and waited. Waited for what? Kriltha asked. For other species to develop naturally without our influence, Chen explained. We used our temporal observation capabilities to watch the galaxy's natural development. We guided events very subtly, very carefully, ensuring that no single species would achieve the kind of dominance that we could have claimed. The display showed the emergence of the Etherians, their first tentative steps into space, their discovery of other worlds. But now Vexhai could see subtle signs of intervention, asteroid impacts that redirected aggressive species, solar flares that delayed certain technological developments, and resource discoveries that encouraged cooperation over conquest. The Galactic Council, Vexhai said slowly, the entire structure of galactic civilization. was carefully orchestrated to promote cooperation, diversity, and mutual respect, Chen confirmed. Every species that joined the council did so because they had developed those qualities naturally, without external pressure. The result has been 50,000 cycles of unprecedented peace and prosperity. But why reveal this now? Vexai asked. Why break your silence after so long? Chen's expression grew grim. Because our temporal observations have detected something that threatens everything we've worked to protect. There's another galaxy approaching our own, one that appears to be completely empty of life. And our deep space monitoring stations have detected the first scouts of whatever destroyed that galaxy. The conference room fell silent as the implications became clear. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, something was moving toward them with intent that could only be malevolent. The entity that destroyed the dead galaxy we discovered, Chen continued, wasn't native to that galaxy. It was something from outside, something that moves from galaxy to galaxy, consuming or destroying everything it encounters. And it's coming here. Vexai felt his exoskeleton trembling. What can we do against something like that? Chen's smile returned, but this time it carried a different quality, not the weight of terrible knowledge, but the confidence of a species that had been preparing for this moment for millennia. Captain, she said, what I'm about to show you is why humanity has remained hidden for so long. It's why we've spent 200,000 cycles preparing instead of conquering. And it's why the secret we've kept may be the only thing that can save every living being in this galaxy. She stood, and as she did, Vexai could see something in her eyes that he had never witnessed in any sentient being before, the look of a predator that had been patiently waiting for its moment to strike. Admiral Chen led Captain Vexai and his officers through what appeared to be a simple transport beam, but Vexai quickly realized they had been moved far beyond the confines of either ship. They now stood in a vast chamber that defied architectural logic, its curved walls seeming to extend infinitely in all directions, while somehow maintaining the intimate feel of a briefing room. Welcome to Sanctuary Station, Chen announced. One of 17,000 facilities that officially don't exist. Kriltha's sensor readings immediately went haywire. Commander, the spatial dimensions here are impossible. According to my instruments, this chamber exists in folded spacetime. The actual volume appears to be several cubic kilometers compressed into a space the size of a standard meeting room. Chen nodded approvingly. Your sensors are more sophisticated than we expected. Yes, this station exists in compressed dimensional space. It's one of the simpler applications of technology we've developed during our isolation. The walls around them became transparent, revealing a sight that made Vexai's breathing apparatus wheeze in shock. Floating in the space beyond were thousands of vessels, each one larger than the biggest council dreadnought, their hulls gleaming with materials that seemed to bend light around them. But these ships were unlike anything in galactic databases. Their designs suggested purposes that went far beyond simple transportation or even warfare. Each of those vessels, Chen explained, walking to the observation area, represents a different approach to the problems we've anticipated. Some are designed for evacuation and preservation. They can house entire planetary populations and sustain them for millions of cycles. Others are research platforms capable of analyzing and countering technologies we've never encountered. She gestured to a cluster of ships that seemed to phase in and out of visibility. Those are our stealth reconnaissance fleet. They've been observing the approaching threat for the past 1,000 cycles, gathering intelligence and preparing countermeasures. Vexai struggled to comprehend the scale of what he was seeing. How many beings could crew a fleet this size? That's the beauty of our approach, Chen replied. These ships don't require large crews in the traditional sense. One of our major technological breakthroughs was the development of consciousness-machine interface systems. A single trained operator can manage vessel systems that would normally require thousands of crew members. A new figure materialized beside them, another human, but one whose presence immediately set Vexai's survival instincts screaming. This newcomer moved with a fluidity that suggested complete mastery of every muscle and nerve, and his eyes held the calculating assessment of someone who could end lives with casual efficiency. Captain Vexai, Chen said, this is General Marcus Rivera, commander of our Special Operations Division. He's been leading our intelligence-gathering efforts regarding the approaching threat. Rivera stepped forward, and Vexai noticed that his uniform bore different markings than Chen's, symbols that seem to shift and change when observed directly. Captain, what we're about to show you is classified at levels that don't officially exist. Before we proceed, I need to know if you're prepared to carry knowledge that could fundamentally alter your species' understanding of reality. Vexai's mandibles clicked uncertainly. What choice do I have? If this threat is real, then someone needs to warn the Council. The Council will be informed, Rivera assured him, but not in the way they might expect. What we're dealing with isn't something that can be resolved through traditional diplomatic or military channels. The space around them shifted, and suddenly they were looking at a three-dimensional star map showing the gap between galaxies. A massive structure moved through the void, something that dwarfed even the largest stellar formations. The entity approaching our galaxy, Rivera began, isn't a typical invasion force. Our observations suggest it's a form of collective intelligence that has consumed the consciousness of every living being it has encountered. It doesn't just destroy civilizations, it absorbs them, adding their knowledge and capabilities to its own. Kriltha's tentacles writhed with barely controlled fear. How do you fight something like that? Rivera's smile was cold and predatory. You fight it with something it has never encountered before, something that doesn't exist in the normal evolutionary development of galactic civilizations. The display changed, showing detailed schematics of weapons systems that seemed to violate fundamental physical laws. Energy conduits that channeled power from pocket dimensions, projectile systems that fired matter directly into alternate realities, and defensive screens that existed in multiple time streams simultaneously. Humanity's greatest advantage, Rivera explained, isn't our technology, although that's formidable. It's our fundamental nature. While other species developed cooperation and harmony as survival traits, humans developed something else. We developed the ability to become apex predators on a galactic scale. Chen moved to another control panel, and the chamber around them transformed into a tactical display showing various galactic species. Every civilization that the Council has encountered developed along predictable lines. They learned to work together, to share resources, to build consensus. These are wonderful qualities that have created the peaceful galaxy we all enjoy. But, Rivera continued, these qualities also create predictable behavioral patterns. The entity we're facing has encountered thousands of civilizations, all of which followed similar developmental paths. It has learned to anticipate and counter every form of resistance they could mount. The display showed simulation after simulation of encounters between the entity and various civilizations. In every case, the pattern was the same: initial contact, attempted diplomacy, gradual infiltration, and eventual absorption. Humans developed differently, Chen explained. Our evolutionary path was shaped by being persistence hunters on a world filled with larger, stronger predators. We learned to be patient, adaptive, and absolutely ruthless when necessary. We developed the ability to think like our prey, to anticipate their movements, and to never give up once we committed to a course of action. Rivera activated another display, this one showing human military doctrine and strategic planning. While other species developed warfare as a last resort, humans perfected it as an art form. We studied every form of conflict, every possible scenario, every potential weakness an opponent might have. But more importantly, Chen added, we learned to suppress these instincts when they weren't needed. The peaceful galaxy you see today exists because humanity chose to step back and let other species develop without our influence. But we never forgot how to be what we truly are. Vexai felt a chill that went beyond physical temperature. What exactly are you saying? Rivera's expression became deadly serious. We're saying that for 200,000 cycles, every species in this galaxy has been protected by the fact that humanity's true nature has been sleeping. But now it's time to wake up. The chamber around them shifted one final time, revealing a sight that made Vexai's consciousness real. Floating in the space before them were beings that appeared to be human, but their eyes held something that no council species had ever witnessed: the focused attention of a predator that had finally found worthy prey. Captain, Chen said quietly, you're looking at the soldiers of the Human Defense Corps. They've spent their entire lives training for a war that we hoped would never come. They've studied every form of combat that has ever existed, and many that haven't been invented yet. One of the soldiers turned toward the observation area, and Vexai saw something in that human's expression that made his exoskeleton lock in primal terror. It was the look of a being that could kill without hesitation, plan without emotion, and fight without mercy, all while maintaining perfect tactical awareness and strategic thinking. The entity approaching our galaxy, Rivera concluded, has never encountered anything like us. It has consumed species that value life, that seek peaceful solutions, that hesitate before taking extreme action. It has never faced a species that can become as ruthless as necessary while retaining complete rational control. Chen placed a hand on Vexai's shoulder, and despite her gentle demeanor, he could feel the controlled strength in that touch. Captain, we're about to ask your species, and every species in the Council, to trust us with something that goes against every civilized instinct you possess. We're going to ask you to let humanity do what we do best. As the implications of her words sank in, Vexai realized that the peaceful galaxy he had always known was about to change forever, and the species responsible for its protection was one that had been hiding in plain sight, patiently waiting for the moment when their true nature would be needed. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the Great Chamber of Nexus Prime, the massive space station that had served as the seat of galactic government for 30,000 cycles. Representatives from over 400 species filled the amphitheater-style seating, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of clicks, whistles, telepathic harmonics, and translated speech. High Chancellor Zarthek of the Etherian Empire called for order with the ceremonial chime that had opened council sessions since the organization's founding. His ancient form, sustained by technology that allowed his species to live for tens of thousands of cycles, commanded immediate respect from every being present. Council members, Zarthek's voice resonated through the chamber's universal translation system. We have convened this emergency session to address revelations that challenge the very foundation of our civilization. Captain Vexai of the Zephyrian Exploration Corps will present his findings. Vexai approached the central podium, his movements uncertain despite the momentous nature of what he was about to reveal. Behind him, a holographic display activated, showing the impossible readings from Earth and the fleet of human vessels that had defied every known law of physics. Honored members, Vexai began, his voice amplified throughout the chamber. 3 cycles ago, my ship encountered a species that our records indicate should be primitive and pre-technological. What we discovered instead was a civilization that claims to have achieved interstellar flight over 200,000 cycles ago. A ripple of disbelief swept through the assembly. Council member Thesara of the Serpentine Collective's scales shifted to deep purple, a sign of extreme agitation. That would predate the founding of the Etherian space program by 150,000 cycles. Such claims are impossible. I thought so as well, Vexai continued, until I witnessed their technology firsthand. They possess faster-than-light communication, dimensional compression, consciousness machine interfaces, and weapons systems that operate on principles our best scientists don't understand. The display showed the images Chen had shared, the massive fleet hidden in folded space, the dimensional compression facilities, and the terrifying sight of human soldiers whose very presence had triggered his deepest survival instincts. But more disturbing than their technological capabilities, Vexai said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, is their claim that they have been secretly guiding galactic development for the past 50,000 cycles. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives from dozens of species began speaking, signing, or telepathically broadcasting at once. High Chancellor Zarthek was forced to use the emergency silence field, instantly muting all communication in the chamber. Continue, Captain, Zarthek commanded. According to Admiral Chen, the humans achieved galactic dominance 200,000 cycles ago, but voluntarily retreated to their homeworld after discovering what such dominance ultimately leads to. They claim to have carefully orchestrated the development of peaceful galactic civilization to prevent any single species from achieving the kind of supremacy that destroys diversity and creativity. Council member Kethnal of the Silicon Confederacy, whose crystalline form resonated with harmonic skepticism, transmitted his question directly to the translation system. If this species possesses such advanced capabilities, why reveal themselves now? Vexai activated the next series of displays, showing the deep space observations of the approaching intergalactic entity. Because something is coming that threatens every living being in our galaxy. An entity that has apparently consumed entire galactic civilizations and is now moving toward us. The silence that followed was absolute. Every being in the chamber understood the implications of such a threat, but the scale of it was beyond comprehension. The humans, Vexai continued, claim that they have been preparing for this eventuality for millennia. They possess military capabilities specifically designed to counter threats that normal galactic civilizations cannot handle. High Chancellor Zarthek's ancient eyes focused with an intensity that spoke of decisions that would affect countless billions of lives. Are you saying that this human species is asking us to trust them with the defense of our entire galaxy? More than that, Vexai replied. They're asking us to allow them to become what they claim they truly are, apex predators on a galactic scale. A new voice filled the chamber, speaking perfect galactic standard, but carrying undertones that made every translation system struggle to convey its full meaning. That's not quite accurate, Captain. Admiral Chen materialized in the center of the chamber, her appearance causing several representatives to activate personal defense shields. She stood calmly in the midst of the most powerful governing body in the galaxy, apparently unaffected by the security systems that should have prevented any unauthorized entry. Honored Council members, Chen said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber without technological assistance. We're not asking for permission to become what we are. We're informing you that we're going to do so whether you approve or not. The silence that followed was pregnant with the weight of ultimatum. High Chancellor Zarthek leaned forward in his ceremonial seat. Admiral Chen, you stand before the collective representatives of 427 species. Are you threatening the Galactic Council? Chen's expression remained calm, but something in her eyes suggested depths of capability that the Council had never encountered. I'm not threatening anyone, Chancellor. I'm stating a reality. The entity approaching our galaxy has consumed billions of civilizations. It has technologies and capabilities that it has acquired from every species it has absorbed. It cannot be reasoned with, negotiated with, or deterred. She gestured, and the space around her filled with tactical displays showing simulations of the approaching threat. Our projections indicate that it will reach the outer rim of our galaxy in approximately 500 cycles. When it arrives, it will begin the same process it has used countless times before: systematic infiltration, absorption of key individuals, and gradual assimilation of entire civilizations. Council member Thesara's scales had shifted to a deep red indicating extreme alarm. What evidence do you have that conventional galactic defense forces cannot handle this threat? Because, Chen replied simply, every civilization it has consumed had conventional defense forces. They all had the same qualities that make the current galactic community so successful: cooperation, consensus building, respect for life, and reluctance to use extreme force. The chamber's lighting dimmed as Chen activated a comprehensive display showing the entity's previous conquests. The entity has learned to counter every form of resistance that naturally develops in galactic civilizations. It knows how to exploit cooperation, how to infiltrate consensus-based governments, and how to turn respect for life into a weakness. High Chancellor Zarthek's expression grew grim. And you believe humanity is different? Chen's smile carried no warmth. Chancellor, humanity is different because we developed along a completely unique evolutionary path. While other species learn to cooperate to survive, humans learn to hunt and kill more effectively than any predator in our ecosystem. We became apex predators not through size or strength, but through intelligence, persistence, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary to ensure our survival. She paused, allowing the implications to sink in. The entity approaching our galaxy has never encountered a species that can match its ruthlessness while retaining complete rational control. It has never faced beings who can make the hard choices without hesitation, who can sacrifice the few to save the many, and who can become as merciless as necessary while never losing sight of their ultimate objectives. Council member Kethnel's crystalline form pulsed with concern. You're describing qualities that sound dangerously close to the entity you claim to oppose. That's exactly right, Chen agreed. The only way to defeat a perfect predator is with another predator that's even better at what it does. The difference is that when this is over, humanity will return to the shadows and allow galactic civilization to continue as it has for 50,000 cycles. High Chancellor Zarthek stood slowly, his ancient frame bearing the weight of a decision that would echo through history. Admiral Chen, you're asking us to trust a species that admits to being capable of galactic domination, to allow you to deploy weapons and tactics that we don't understand, and to essentially hand over the defense of our civilization to beings whose true nature has been hidden from us for millennia. Chen met his gaze steadily. Chancellor, I'm not asking for your trust. The human defense fleet will deploy whether you approve or not. What I'm offering is coordination and communication. You can be informed partners in the defense of this galaxy, or you can discover the outcome when it's over. The chamber fell silent as 427 species contemplated a choice between accepting help from a hidden predator species or facing an intergalactic threat alone. High Chancellor Zarthek's voice carried the weight of ages when he finally spoke. Admiral Chen, what guarantee do we have that humanity will step back once this threat is eliminated? Chen's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of the being behind the military facade. Chancellor, we've had the power to dominate this galaxy for 200,000 cycles. The fact that you're having this conversation in a chamber full of free, independent species is the only guarantee you need. As the implications of her words settled over the assembly, every being present realized they were witnessing the moment when the galaxy's greatest secret was finally revealed, and its most dangerous guardians stepped out of the shadows to face a threat that could end everything they had ever known. The first sign of the entity's arrival came not through conventional sensors, but through the screams of dying stars. On the outer rim of the galaxy, ancient suns that had burned for billions of years suddenly began to dim and collapse, their stellar matter being drawn away by forces that defied every known law of physics. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of humanity's primary war vessel, the Eternal Vigilance Asterisk, watching the tactical displays with the calm focus of a predator that had finally found its prey. Around her, human officers worked with machine-like precision, their consciousness interfaces allowing them to process information and coordinate responses at speeds that would have overwhelmed any other known species. Admiral, reported Commander Torres from the sensor station, the entity has consumed 17 star systems in the past cycle. Rate of advancement is accelerating. Estimated time to first populated worlds, 43 cycles. Chen nodded, her expression unchanged. For 200,000 years, humanity had prepared for this moment. Every simulation had been run, every possible scenario analyzed, every weakness in the approaching threat identified and catalogued. Now it was time to discover if their preparations had been sufficient. Signal the Council fleet, she ordered. Begin Phase 1 withdrawal of all civilian populations from the outer rim sectors. The evacuation had begun 3 cycles ago, as soon as the entity's approach was confirmed. Massive human transport vessels, each capable of housing millions of beings, had appeared throughout the galaxy to assist in the largest relocation effort in galactic history. The cooperative nature that had made the Galactic Council so successful was now serving them well, as species after species abandoned their outer settlements without panic or chaos. Captain Vexhai, now serving as a liaison officer aboard the Eternal Vigilance Asterisk, watched the evacuation reports with amazement. The coordination is incredible, he commented to Chen. 400 species, tens of thousands of worlds, and not a single incident of conflict or refusal to cooperate. That's why we protected this galaxy for so long, Chen replied. The civilization that developed here is the most remarkable achievement in the known universe, a truly cooperative galactic community. It's worth preserving. The main display shifted to show the approaching entity in all its terrible majesty. It wasn't a single massive object, but rather a collective consciousness that inhabited and controlled countless ships, stations, and converted planetary masses. As it moved through space, it consumed everything in its path, not just destroying it, but incorporating it into its ever-growing collective. Admiral, Commander Torres called out, we're receiving a transmission from the entity. It's attempting to establish communication. Chen's expression hardened. Put it through, but maintain all defensive protocols. The display flickered, and suddenly they were looking at something that challenged the very concept of individual consciousness. The image showed a being that seemed to shift and flow between different forms, sometimes appearing as familiar galactic species, sometimes as configurations of pure energy, sometimes as geometric patterns that hurt to observe directly. We are the Convergence, it spoke in a voice that seemed to come from millions of different sources simultaneously. We have observed your galaxy and find it suitable for integration. Resistance will result in destruction. Cooperation will result in preservation of consciousness within our collective. Chen stepped forward, and Vexai noticed that her bearing had changed completely. Gone was any trace of the diplomatic facade she had maintained during council meetings. What stood before the entity now was something that he was beginning to understand was humanity's true face, a predator that had been patiently waiting for this moment. I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Defense Fleet, she replied, her voice carrying undertones that made the translation system struggle. Your offer is rejected. This galaxy is under our protection. The entity's form shifted, focusing on Chen with what might have been surprise. You speak of protection, yet our scans indicate this galaxy contains over 400 distinct species. No single species has achieved dominance. This is inefficient. Inefficient according to your standards, Chen agreed. But it's also something you've never encountered before, a galaxy where the dominant species chose to remain hidden and allow others to develop freely. The entity's form began to pulse with what could only be interpreted as interest. Show us this dominant species. Chen smiled, and Vexai felt his exoskeleton lock as he witnessed an expression that carried the focused attention of 200,000 years of preparation. You're looking at them. The response was immediate and devastating. The entity launched what appeared to be a consciousness probe, a form of attack it had used to instantly dominate the leadership of every civilization it had encountered. The probe struck Chen with enough psychic force to shatter the mind of any normal being. Chen didn't even flinch. Is that the best you can do? She asked conversationally. We've been preparing for that particular attack for millennia. The entity's form writhed with what could only be shock. Impossible. No organic consciousness can resist direct integration. You're right, Chen agreed. No organic consciousness can resist it, but you're not dealing with purely organic consciousness anymore. She gestured, and suddenly the space around the eternal vigilance filled with the rest of the human fleet. Thousands of vessels appeared as if they had been hiding in plain sight, each one bristling with weapons and technologies that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. You see, Chen continued, when you've had 200,000 years to prepare for a specific type of enemy, you develop some interesting countermeasures. Every human in this fleet has undergone consciousness enhancement that makes us immune to your integration attempts. We've studied your tactics, analyzed your technology, and designed specific responses to everything you can do. The entity's attacks came swift and merciless. Energy weapons that could crack planets, reality distortion fields that had consumed entire star systems, and swarms of converted vessels from its previous conquests. Each attack was met by human countermeasures that seemed to have been designed specifically to neutralize those exact threats. Vexai watched in fascination and terror as the human fleet moved through the battle with choreographed precision. Their ships didn't just fight, they hunted. Each movement was calculated to maximize damage while minimizing exposure, each attack designed to exploit weaknesses that the entity didn't even know it had. How, Vexai whispered, how did you prepare for threats you had never encountered? Chen's attention remained focused on the battle, but she answered his question. Because we studied you, Captain. We studied every species in the galaxy, analyzed their strengths and weaknesses, their tactical preferences and strategic limitations. Then we designed ourselves to counter every possible approach to galactic warfare. The entity began to retreat, its collective consciousness apparently recognizing that it had encountered something unprecedented. But the human fleet pursued with relentless efficiency, cutting off escape routes and systematically dismantling the entity's component vessels. The difference between us and every other species you've absorbed, Chen said to the entity over the communication link, is that we're not trying to save you. We're not looking for diplomatic solutions or hopping to find common ground. We're here to completely destroy you, and will use whatever methods are necessary to accomplish that goal. The battle raged across multiple star systems, but its outcome had been determined the moment it began. The entity had spent eons perfecting tactics to counter civilizations that valued life, sought peaceful solutions, and hesitated before using extreme force. It had never faced a species that could be as ruthless as necessary while maintaining perfect tactical control. One by one, The entity's components were isolated and destroyed. Its consciousness integration attacks proved useless against humans who had specifically modified themselves to be immune. Its reality distortion weapons were countered by human technology that operated on principles the entity couldn't comprehend. In the end, the convergence that had consumed countless galaxies was reduced to a single fleeing ship, its collective consciousness fragmenting as its components were systematically eliminated. Final transmission from the entity, Commander Torres reported. Chen nodded, put it through. The image that appeared was barely recognizable as the confident collective that had entered their galaxy. What? What are you? Chen's smile carried no mercy. We're what happens when persistence hunters develop galactic-level technology and 200,000 years to prepare for you. We're the nightmare that evolution creates when a species learns to hunt prey that's bigger, stronger, and more advanced than they are. The final shot was precise and absolute. The entity's last ship simply ceased to exist, its matter converted to energy and dispersed across interstellar space. The silence that followed was broken by communications from across the galaxy as Council species realized that the threat had been eliminated. But Vexai noticed that none of the human ships were celebrating. They simply returned to their positions with the same mechanical precision they had displayed throughout the battle. Admiral, he asked quietly, what happens now? Chen's expression softened as the predator aspects of her nature settled back into dormancy. Now, Captain, we go back to being the species that chooses to remain hidden so that the rest of the galaxy can continue developing in freedom and peace. The human fleet began to disperse, their vessels disappearing as suddenly as they had appeared. Within cycles, the only evidence of their presence would be the absence of the threat that had seemed unstoppable. Will we see you again? Vexai asked. Chen smiled, and this time it carried warmth instead of threat. Captain, you've been seeing us for 50,000 years. You just didn't know it. We'll still be here, still watching, still protecting. The difference is that now you know we exist. As the asterisk Eternal Vigilance prepared to return to whatever hidden dimension it called home, Vexai realized that the galaxy had been forever changed. Not by the threat that had been defeated, but by the knowledge that somewhere in the darkness between stars, humanity continued its eternal vigil. The secret that had never been shared was no longer secret, but the guardians who had kept it remained as committed as ever to protecting the remarkable civilization that had flourished under their hidden protection. In the end, the galaxy's greatest predator had proven to be its most devoted protector, and the species capable of ultimate destruction had chosen instead to ensure that every other species could choose its own destiny among the stars.